across the country. And a spin-off magazine was flying off the newsstands. Scout fever had gripped the nation. Scouting offered something special that other groups didn't. At its core was a belief in the positive power of play and make-believe. Scouting for Boys is peppered with ideas for staging little plays, dramatising poems, putting on a show, and it encouraged each boy to imagine himself as a potential hero on the bigger stage of life. The boys of Britain at the start of the 20th century had no interest in the romantic life of the chief scout. They were just thrilled that, unlike most Edwardian adults, he refused to patronise them. He entrusted them with civic tasks, like giving first aid or directing people in fog. Responsibility, he believed, developed character. Of course, this had its funny side, and Baden Powell was the first to admit that his fad of scouting might appear ridiculous, and others were quick to join in the joke. This is a Punch cartoon from as early as 1909, which seems to be laughing at the idea of the Scouts coming to the rescue. It shows a very small boy attempting to help a rather large lady across the beach. And he says, "Fear not, Grandma, no danger can befall you now, I'm with you." Yet crucially, it's titled Our Youngest Line of Defence. And this isn't any old lady, this is Mrs. Britannia, who stands for the entire British Empire, which the Scouts have been charged with saving.
Remember that the Roman Empire 2,000 years ago was comparatively just as great as the British Empire of today. It fell at last, chiefly because the young Romans gave up soldiering and manliness altogether. Don't be disgraced like the young Romans, who lost the empire of their forefathers by being wishy-washy slackers without any go or patriotism in them.
Edwardians were obsessed with the idea of losing the British Empire. When thinking of a really serious enemy like the Germans, most senior army officers were convinced that we might lose. And it would be the loss of the empire, even of our country, our national wealth. It would have been really a catastrophe.
By 1914, a generation of boys had been immersed in the book's patriotism and primed to see themselves as literal protectors of the nation.
Every boy ought to learn how to shoot and to obey orders, else he is no more good when war breaks out than an old woman, and merely gets killed like a squealing rabbit, unable to defend himself.
So it might seem that the First World War was the call to arms which Baden Powell had been preparing for all along. Baden Powell insisted that every boy be able to handle a weapon, but he refused to see his scout movement as a sort of military cadet force. Indeed, Baden Powell defended himself against charges of militarism in Scouting for Boys. He said there was a world of difference between self-defence, standing up to bullies on the international stage, and bloodthirsty warmongering.
When an eminent public man wrote to me that I ought not to teach boys soldiering because, as he puts it, he hates war like the devil, I felt bound to reply that had he actually seen anything of war himself, he would, like most soldiers, hate it worse than the devil.
Rather than see his scouts become a branch of the armed forces, the chief scout offered his boys for civilian duties, running errands, working in Red Cross centres, and coast watching. But the war inevitably took its toll on the scouting movement. 250,000 former scouts and scoutmasters fought for king and country, of whom 10,000 died. Among the fatalities were 5 of the 20 boys who joined Baden Powell on Brownsea Island back in 1907. After the catastrophe of World War, Baden Powell decided that scouting had to become a force for world peace. The imperialism of the original handbook was soon eclipsed by the internationalist message of global scouting.
That's what we're after, to try and breed in the next oncoming generation that spirit of friendship, comradeship, and goodwill, which is the true foundation for peace in the world.
That hope proved illusory, but the scouting ideal continued throughout the 20th century, even though other youth movements with less worthy aims borrowed heavily from its trappings. The communist Soviet pioneers, the Italian young fascists, and infamously the Hitler Youth. But to assume that all boys in shorts are brainwashed stormtroopers in waiting does a grave injustice to Baden Powell's Edwardian experiment. After all, which of these movements didn't mind what religion you were, or what colour, or what class? And which of them instructed their members to smile and whistle under all circumstances? One of Baden Powell's favourite mottos was "get a laugh on." His movement was always a mixture of earnestness and playfulness. He wanted to instruct boys how to cut down trees, but he couldn't resist adding, "Don't chop your leg off." That's why the book is still so engaging, and despite being firmly rooted in the Edwardian era, it was trying to address issues that still resonate today. Inner city deprivation, boys without role models, unhealthy lifestyles, the need for citizenship. Amazingly, it's all in there, which is why, 100 years later, I think it's still worth saluting.
The 70s. Remember lurid purple wallpaper, avocado bathrooms. And then remember those smock dresses and big rating TV dramas like Upstairs, Downstairs. The Edwardian Resurrection. Next.